Hello everyone, I was asked by my highest tier patron to play a game I actually like, and was going to do that with Stellaris until I moved from Arizona to Wisconsin and got lost for a month. Now I've decided to start that up again because I technically only partially completed the patron's request. And I would like to welcome you to what is probably my favorite game, considering I have 1,400 hours in it. That's not a joke. And I still manage to learn something new every day. Not every new colony I make. No, I mean every 3 to 5 hours I learn something brand new that I didn't know before. Not something minor either. Usually something I can apply to the current game I'm playing in all future games. Or I forgot something and then had to relearn it. Oh boy. So, welcome to RimWorld. And that much said, let's get started. Here's my setup. So, I went and made a custom setup because I agreed that my next RimWorld game would be Dwarves. In this case, a bunch of exiled runecasters. You can see everything you need to set in order for you to get what I'm going to get here. You set to Maynard Medieval, Unblood, and Dust. And here are all the different... The seed is rock and stone, crowded, almost maxed out, and then we generate our world. I've been doing this since 0.76 version of RimWorld. We're up to version 1.51 with 4 DLCs. We're still playing 1.49 because the mod list hasn't updated with Combat Extended. Now, as you can see, these are my coordinates. And I'm going to begin... I made a bunch of preloaded stuff to help out with this. This is not my first attempt at a dwarven colony recently. This is actually the 4th. Yeah, that was the last attempt. Need I say more? That's day 1 starting. Now, Combat Extended is an overhaul mod that I wouldn't want to play without. And that is because normal RimWorld combat is both very forgiving and doesn't model individually body parts beyond head, hands, torso, legs, and arms, and feet. Injuries in RimWorld beyond that are random, and combat is so much more forgiving, both to you and your enemies, allowing it to be easier capturing, treating wounds, or converting your enemies, while at the same time making everything last a lot longer. Combat Extended bases armor on thickness in millimeters of steel and concussive force protection. This makes armoring your colonists super important. I'm going through my ideology process and rounding out the ideology with styles. Styles change how each individual part of your colony looks. In the meantime, CE, Combat Extended, referred to as CE, further models individual fingers, toes, ears, jaw, neck, nose, ears, and organs as places where blows can land. When a blow lands, to determine what body part is hit and how thick the armor is there. Then CE determines if it penetrated or not, if it did damage, or if the damage is halved. As you might wonder, that makes a big difference for how combat works and how quickly people can go down. Now, this game is going to be stuck here until it's finished. You want in the colony? Let's introduce the first 5 colonists on our dwarven adventure. I have made a heavily modified game for this. So heavily modified, in fact, that there are over 200 mods working together in harmony to make this function. 260 to be precise. You'll find the mod list in the description that you can download and apply to your own game if you really want this madness. It takes 10 to 14 minutes for the game just to power up. In this case, I've created a medieval fantasy world based on Dungeons & Dragons, some Tolkien lore, thrown in some Witcher monsters and Viking mythos for good measure, and we are truly dwarves called Stoneborn, as well as a custom gene kit called Runecaster. The story goes as follows. Stoneborn are supposed to be magically deaf and resistant to most forms of magic. However, sometimes a magically adept one is born called a runecaster. In this case, runecasters have two primary advantages. They are magically adept and become even more so as they age. Further, they generate no actual raid presence, as they are magically invisible to those trying to seek them out. However, they lose most of their Stormborn advantages and are genetically female. The reason for the latter choice is because pregnancy in RimWorld is extremely debilitating and risky for an adventurer, or anyone for that matter, due to the constant raids, animal dangers, and other issues, making it where if we want to have children, which we do, added to counter our advantages when we get absolutely no benefit for being restricted to being female. Hey, so our most powerful warriors might just be pregnant on any given day and unable to fight. That much said, let me introduce you to the 5 dwarves we start with. I chose to include these people based upon Patreon and the requests that were made, as well as people who helped me make this possible. I also included myself not because of an ego trip, but because if I'm going to ask all of you to risk your lives, limbs, and happiness, then I'm going to take those risks myself. Further, you may notice I've disabled the Twitch toolkit. You can't directly interfere here, but your comments can make me do things, or make certain things happen. Such as me seeking out a particular animal you want to add to the colony, or, you know, you guys getting to be the colonists, because I'll rename the people that we find to whoever's commented, starting in episode 3. In the meantime, Adagio, being the top-tier patron who made this request, is also known as our Brute Squad. He is a disgraced knight who just wanted to be a peaceful farmer. Like all Stoneborn are supposed to be, he's magically deaf. But he loves it underground. He's pretty for a dwarf, too, and always composed in nearly every situation. Both our Brute Squad and a rock we can stand on, right? I volunteered for this torture, and I'm a jack of all trades, a knight errant until my runecaster powers were discovered. I trained in the art of one day building the greatest, most grand dwarven hall the world has ever seen. Lori, and why she has the hero talent is directly descended from the god Moradin, god of creation and the forge. She is a master smith, but with dreams of travel and a curious nature to her. She's also very well balanced stat-wise. That's right, I included the RPG stat mod in this game so that we would actually have drastically different stats from person to person. Different walk speeds, different attack speeds, different capabilities in melee, different carry amounts, different effects for, you know, our ability to converse with each other. Julie Candledraw, one of my patrons selected for this task, is female IRL. That's probably why she was selected. The number of female patrons I have is very small. Julie is an elite swordswoman. She is a baby who was found in a forest and specializes in mining. She also happens to like dogs and the thrill of battle for reasons we don't exactly understand. Anyway, Stargazer Song, the other patron who is selected here, he's an orphan boy to a stonemason family. He just wanted to be a chef. All his life, the world has gotten him down, and finally he saw the world was ready to crush another group of dwarven dreams. He found his bravery and said, "No, I will help." Though trained as a stonemason, he hates it, and would rather dig into the earth for things yet unknown, or find an archaeologist site to piece together one day in order to make the greatest meal of all time. So we have 3 runecaster women, 2 dwarven men, and a few tents to start. And this is our story so far. While I'm doing the RimWorld scramble, let's talk about it. We were cast out due to the Empire of Man ruling from that dwarven mages are outlawed, but because of royal heritage, we were not immediately executed for a crime of being born. Instead, exiled to the waste where they believed we would all die. However, my best friend Adagio and his friend Stargazer decided they couldn't let women go off into the wilderness to die. Stargazer, being a bard, heard stories of a fallen hold, which is where we have found a monument for that hold and the remaining walls that have not yet collapsed. The tunnels, however, are all gone, long since forgotten and abandoned. What you're seeing is the day 1 scramble, by the way. You see colonists have a mood bar, you know, so at the top how Adagio and I have a green background, Julie and Lori have blue ones, and Stargate has a gray one. This indicates how happy we are. The happier we are, the better off we are, and we have certain needs and wants, such as basic shelter, food, a table to eat on. No telling how many times I had colonists go psycho because the last thing that finally broke the straw was 8 without a table. Further, we're starting 12 days already into the growing season, because you'll look down here, and it's the 12th of Apiary. Shit. There's only 25 growing days where we have started. And there's only 60 days in a RimWorld year. So as of the third month, September, we won't be able to plant any new crops. And as of December, all the crops will stop. As of mid-September, all the crops will stop growing and start dying. Not just for us, though. Our 3 owlbear pets. I did say D&D here before, and I'm going to say it again, before a beholder is inside this mountain and kills us all. Say hello to Debutante, Stepson, and Petra, who, well, they were in my setup, but I didn't realize the game would immediately bond them to one of the characters, and it chose the first colonist on the list, which happened to be me. Anyway, animal bonds, for those who don't know, increase their pain resistance and give a mood boost to the colonist they're bonded to, so long as that colonist is their master and trainer. However, that means that that character is now taking care of that animal, regardless if they want to or not. Further, if a bonded animal dies, it can send your colonist into a murderous rage, and also gives a massive mood debuff for an entire year. And that goes as well for the animal. If Fiaura dies, the owlbears are going to murder everything around them, in exchange for them performing tasks and fighting for us, as well as being excellent mounts. Yes, Dwarven Owlbear Cavalry. I'll let you think about that after watching the D&D movie and watching what happens when an owlbear gets a hold of someone. We will, however, have to feed them and provide a place for them to have their young. They do lay eggs. Just in case that was a question about whether owlbears laid eggs or not, they lay eggs. Let's move on. So day 1 scramble, basic shelter in place. We're getting grow zones set up to make crops so we don't starve this winter. The tents are what we're going to have to live in for a little bit. I need to get this wall repaired as quickly as possible. Oh look, we're already on day 2. Midnight's arrived and everybody is in bed. Now, Lori, having already reached the level of specialization, 15 in a skill, is going to become a legendary heroic armor smith. And I'm going to get into the meat of the video with our goals, which is based on the Dwarven Book of Grudges. Grudges are anytime someone offends the dwarves, and how that grudge might be satisfied. We have 2 goals. Grudge 0, the ancient grudge against goblins and orcs. Anytime we can get revenge on them, we'll do it. I'm sorry, you lost me for a minute in angry greenskin. We have revenge upon the Empire who exiled us. We're going to bring them to their knees until they beg for mercy. And 2, we must build a dwarven hold to marvel at, and that openly accepts runecasters. That's all. All other goals will be added organically as we are attacked, raided, or wronged. We will add it to the list and right the wrong. So this isn't static, it will get updated with each event. Anyway, the end of day 1. The footage you were seeing for the day 1 scramble was actually playing at 400%, rather than 100%. At 100% speed, that day 1 scramble would take 40 solid minutes. We do find some amethyst, indicating we are in the right spot for the dwarven hold. Precious magical gems held back there. Interesting. But if you do appreciate this video so far, please hold a grudge against that like button and hit it with your mouse cursor. I'd appreciate if at least 20 of you would do that. It would be totally awesome as I'm sitting over here folding papers and watching people mine to set up our initial barracks. I say initial barracks. This is a dwarven hold. We're not going to live in a barracks forever. But since this is no pause mode, I can't slow down and pause. So while my character builds our first table, and technically Menard Medieval restricts everything to the medieval age or middle age tech, but with no pause and this being my 4th attempt, I know I can't slow down. Now, these are the events of what is likely going to be 1,000 days in RimWorld as a challenge. I see so many YouTubers say, I spent 100 days, and I laugh at them. You spent 100 days? That's it? Let me illustrate this to you. In biotech, at base speed of 400% child age rate, you can't raise a child from birth to adulthood in 100 days. That's not even a joke. For a child to go from age 0 at the base age rate of 400% takes a whopping 240 days. And like that, the first grudge is made against a rabid coyote who's trying to attack me and eat me. Adagio wakes up in the middle of the night, and the two of us begin bashing him apart. This would actually also cause Adagio to ask me on a date on day 2, and I agreed. We'll see how that goes. The first thing of our dating life being me smashing a coyote's head in. But we need to get inside and get protected from the elements and get our crops moving. A scout from the Empire shows up, and I'm none too happy to see them. You could say it's ironic that the rat from the Empire is named after the largest rat on Earth, Capybara. But I set up our milestones as well. We got 2 milestone points for new tribes starting at the beginning of the medieval era. We'll have 1 more very shortly. I decide inner strength for mental breaks and whispers of the mind for mind focus. Now you guys can look over this list, pause the video if you need, and figure out what the third one's going to be. Or you can go to the mod, Vanilla Expanded Tribals. We're digging in to make the initial workshop. You'll notice the workbenches are disappearing because we're dropping chunks of boulder. Those chunks can be used to make blocks, which will eventually become both our outer fortress walls and the inner walls of our hold. Our first meditation session is going well. You also need to remember adventurers need light and some cooling to survive. Underground is very hot and very cold, depending on where you're standing. So we get to have our first simple meditation. The area for the barracks has been carved out. I'm folding papers in Adagio's face to understand cooking better, so we might make some decent food instead of simple meals for all of winter. Don't tempt me, I'll do it. All of this, and everything seems to be going fine. I decided, you know what, I can speed up the game for a little bit. Mark the home zone. Take my time. And our first grudge arrives. A group who have come to seize trees from our land without permission. The Neanderthals from Lufig. I've been added to the list of grudges. And I'm not just calling them Neanderthals. They're actually genetically Neanderthals. That's not even me, like, insulting them. That's what they are. I set up an area here shortly for a research bench. A kind of actual research room. It'd be across the hall from the barn so that I can easily go back and forth between researching and taking care of animals. At least that's the initial plan. I also am getting around to the point where we're going to build our first beds. We're going to build these initially, and then we're going to use our tents to take apart to build proper beds. I begin designing the barracks, making sure we have our little end tables for knickknacks, empty our pockets into, maybe put some candles on, dressers for our clothes, and a little plate and a little passive cooler to try to keep the room from overheating this summer. Then we get back into the workshop. A kind of a simple place. And you're now seeing the footage sped up again. I've replaced the original footage audio in these sped up sections, but that's just because, let's face it, it's rather obnoxious. And then the death hornets arrive. That's right, death stingers. Hornets the size of people. And begin attacking Lori. Adagio and Lori, however, are not having it, and manage to kill the 2 of them that are attacking them. As they begin to celebrate their victory, and I check them for injuries, as well as realize that I'm actually checking the death stinger and not Lori. And Lori's been stung in the mouth. And then another one arrives! Seeing as it might not be a good idea to let the little dwarves stand outside and celebrate their victory, I think it's time we come inside. Candledraw begins tending to Lori's wounds, while I decide that I'm not going to get another grudge today. And I set out looking for the last death stinger that showed up when the first two began stinging, and began to hit it with lightning bolts to get it to run away and be stunned. The bolts don't do a lot of damage, but they do cause animals to flee from the area. And that's kind of their main purpose, is just to get the animals to run off before I run it down and kill it. And then put a couple more bolts to make sure it's not going to mysteriously get up on me. Just in case I don't want to end up stung like Lori before bashing its head in. Our first raid arrives, those sneaky goblin bastards. And immediately they win a Darwin Award. As if I needed to do anything about them. They run straight into the hostile insect hive on the edge of the map. And it eats both of them. I have no intention of saving these two. They're not worth it. Yeah, you were veterinarians. And then I noticed a scout from the Magic Academy also arrived here. And ran into the insect hive and got eaten. So if a goblin can do it, a wizard can do it too. Finally, we spend our first night in an actual barrack with a solid stone roof over our heads. But it's just the beginning. As a group of rare Thrumbos arrive, it is the 20th day here, and while normally I would try to tame these giant magical space unicorns, I also know that they eat a shitload of food. Food we don't have yet. So I'm going to leave them be and just enjoy the look while they pass. We use the silk from our tents and the basic components we brought in order to make beds with actual covers and springs. A significant improvement in both sleeping quality and just generally how well the room looks put together. It's nice because excellent quality beds, I've said them to be excellent quality because better beds mean your colonists have to sleep less because the sleep is better. They get woken up less and they fall asleep faster. That also means that if we screw it up, I'm going to have to, take the bed completely apart and start over. It is what it is. But we can't be perfect. And I need to get these beds built for tonight because it's already 2300 and our colonists are going to go to bed at midnight. I prefer my colonists to go to bed at midnight instead of sleeping between the split of the day. Julie actually gets the first psychic level up, bringing her to get the ability to leap a great distance, up to 12 meters base, plus magical sensitivity can bring it all the way out to 20 or 30 meters in a single bound. I notice, meanwhile, Adagio goes and scouts out an animatree. Animatrees are giant wells of magic given life and form. And for those of you who are My Little Pony fans, think of them as miniature trees of harmony. And in this case, this is our tree of harmony. We're gonna extract it from where it is, bring it back to closer to us, and I just measured out the distance of the minimum 10 meter zone you're not allowed to build artificial buildings in, otherwise the tree dies. And when it dies, it's very, very bad. The magical scream inside of our heads will drive us insane. But by nurturing the tree and meditating around it, we can enhance our psychic power even faster and link to the tree directly in order to be granted additional psychic powers. I'm also measuring in for nature shrines to place around the tree to help nurture it and make it happier. We'll do that later. Meanwhile, Lori is cleaning up the remains of the battlefield. Normally I would bury fallen dwarves, but these have been dead so long that their spirits aren't here anymore. And burying them would be probably pointless because we know not their names or their families. So creating a crypt for those long forgotten like this would, in fact, be a wasted effort, especially when those still alive need to survive. And that means we need to clear them out of our garden. A noble shows up from the Empire begging for help. He's lost his guards and has escaped and is being chased by a man-hunting arrow fleet, aka a floating sky jellyfish. I also might have misspelled the name of the town. I meant to give it as an honor to Von Holtz, but seeing as I misspelled it, I guess I'll let you guys name the town. So, let me know in the comments what you want to see the town renamed as. I would appreciate this. This will also give me an initial head of people to maybe start considering for joining the colony. Best comment gets to join the colony when we get new people, whether they be children or someone else. I decide we're not going to be as bad as the Empire, however. They may have cast us out, but if someone is genuinely begging for help, and we appear to have the power to do it, I will accept. And there he is. Muske. Is that your name? I see. I immediately ride out on Stetson, anticipating the creature that was chasing him, and searching the area for it. I'm also trying to casually tame that elk. A task that I will probably give up on, because elk are not very good to tame. I just kind of wanted us to have some milk. When the hostile creature shows up and begins spitting acid at me. I didn't know they could spit acid xenomorph style, so I rush forward and smash it, and then it explodes in acid. Exactly as if I was in an Aliens movie. Yeah, it's not going well. We need to rush back and get our injuries treated before those acid burns become infected. And also, they're life-threatening to one of our owlbear. I then spot these rocks. Rocks are an animal from medieval Overhaul. They provide decent wool and milk, and more importantly, meat can be used to make rocks steak and wine meals. Supposedly, the best meal that medieval Overhaul can offer, offering massive bonuses to virtually every stat, and making it where your colonists don't have to eat nearly as often. I make a mental note of that as I'm treating Stetson on the floor for their acid burns, ignoring my own wounds to treat one of my owlbears. And then, reluctantly, I agree to have my own wounds treated as I begin to hatch that sort of plan. A weaponsmith from the Intwer dynasty arrives. These people are receptive to us. Unlike the Empire just using us for whatever they want and casting us aside, they actually are decent folk. And they've recovered the Retribution Great Hammer, a legendary artifact that I simply cannot afford to purchase. We're but a poor, barely starting dwarven outpost. We're not a grand hold who has 8,000 silver to throw around. Lori goes out and hunts our first animal we've had to hunt, which turns out to be an asthmatic moose. I'm sorry, moose. I'm not even sure we're doing wrong here. I think we're just, helping nature along. The Empire does arrive and grants and bestows upon me the honor granted of the title of Freeholder to Yeoman, the lowest ranking noble recognized noble of peerage in the Empire for my efforts in saving that random count. At least the acid burns were worth something. Being officially recognized diplomatically is kind of nice. The owlbears have already gotten busy in their barn that's only semi-complete, that doesn't even have beds for them built yet. And this includes 2 owlbear eggs, which I need names for. We'll talk about them in episode 3. But yeah, the owlbears are already making babies. And I honestly need some names for the babies. before they hatch, preferably. See, I'm giving you guys a bunch of stuff you can leave in the comments. Come on, hit me with it. Yes, that's, I didn't realize it until, you know, shortly before this that owlbears do in fact lay eggs. Another merchant from the Etchwer dynasty shows up, but he has nothing of important particular note. And then our first real raid shows up from the Shakato Shogunate, a bunch of officially sanctioned rookie samurai. However, between hurling fire at them and them not coming in as a group, but instead trickling in numbers of 1 and 2, as well as a couple of lightning bolts, they don't really stand much of a chance. I hold Adagio in reserve right up until one of them throws a throwing star at him, and Adagio firmly plants his mace in that guy's face. Petra has been cut across the chin as another chain lightning begins to shatter through them. And now it's a matter of cleaning up the trash. We're not going to allow a single man from this raid to survive. Shagato Shogunate, you're on the list. If I'm mispronouncing that, please let me know. It would be appreciated. But officially, we're adding them to the grudge as we celebrate our victory. There is also a nice demigryph shield that one of them has dropped. Oh, look. An Imperial trade caravan. They do look sharp with their griffin helmets and with their demigryph helmets and their heavy hauberks and their massive mole and Thunder Rocks mounts. They do look quite impressive. Meanwhile, what's going on here? Oh god, the other insect hive. Yeah, there's 2 insect hives on this map, and the Republic caravan has run headlong into it. Lori, deciding to be a hero, rushes in and begins slaying insects. There's a problem, though, and it's a devastating one. I know that we have no place for these fallen guards to actually be held or receive medical treatment. We just don't have a hospital yet, and we don't have the extra bed space. We may get revenge for their deaths, but we can do nothing to save them. But thank them for making it possible to clear out this insect hive before it became a major problem. Which Gabinius seems to stand up and acknowledge, and then immediately falls back down. But thankfully this means that the insect hive down here is destroyed before it can become a major problem and grow out of control. It also means for us that we watch these Empire guards and knights walk through here like they own the place and don't help a soul or even help Lori finish off the insectoid threat. That seems wrong. Seeing as we can't save them, we decide to save what we can, and we'll take their supplies. I will also send Lori back to get the wine, because we're dwarves, and heaven's gods forbid that we allow wine to go bad. Then we get a blood moon! As I'm setting up a place to dump bodies. That's not an ominous sign at all. The Empire Caravan is just now arriving from their long trek to get to our hold. And we're getting a blood moon. Yeah. It is what it is. Thankfully, there are no vampires around to take advantage of the blood moon at the moment, so it's not like we have to worry about it or be concerned. I noticed the demigryph shield and that Adagio's shield is breaking. However, there's a problem with the demigryph shield. It's not patched for combat extended. Sometimes you get very cool mods and there's just a random item or a couple of items in there that are completely unpatched for combat extended and therefore don't function correctly. So after it turns out that the merchant is just here to taunt us and lacks any real merchandise, what assholes. They just came here to taunt us and and laugh at the fact that we're basically destitute. I will use the character creator to modify the Demigryph shield into a shield that is actually usable by Combat Extended's logic. If someone has a problem with this, let me know in the comments and I'll never do it again. But it didn't make any sense that our only piece of loot wouldn't work at all. And then I accidentally modified it into another shield that won't work for Combat Extended. So I have to unequip it, put it into inventory, and then I can search shield properly in order to get... See, sometimes mods don't mesh exactly right. And here we are. Standard Dwarven round shield. Made of iron. At the same quality. Done. And that shield I'll just dispose of. We'll never speak of that shield ever again. It did not exist. See? Did not exist. A cave troll decides while I'm out here recovering an ancient dwarven urn to use as artwork for our own base and to honor the the dwarves who died here, decides I'm dinner. I decide his fur would make a great coat. And lightning bolts agreed with me. So, get a grudge on a cave troll, immediately satisfy the grudge. There's also some beggars showing up who want 450 silver. I don't even think we have 450 silver yet. We haven't found a silver vein. And we definitely haven't sold much to the merchants that have come by because so far they've been seeking items we don't have. But we do spend we spend almost all of our silver on a bunch of steaks. I'm tempted to buy this goblin. Really tempted. And then I notice he's a liar and he can't do half the things he said he could do. And that goblin is not going to be a proper slave for us. Meanwhile, Octavius, a wild stoneborn runecaster, a woman who has gone near feral, shows up. So I ignore the Iruka Shogun's slave trader, and instead, I also notice the bodies, and the bodies would only exist if there was a predator. So Julie rushes in, finds the dire wolf, and beats the snot out of it before it can threaten the wild woman. Meanwhile, Stargazer is going to attempt to bring Octavia back to civilization and offer her a safe refuge. However, Octavia here is more interested in the prepackaged meal that Julie dropped while she was fighting the wolf, and is apparently very, very, very much food motivated. It's one of those isms. So even as Stargazer makes his best effort, she decides to turn him away. Now this is important to note. Wild people in RimWorld, this is our second attempt where I'm trying to convince her. And the camera is slightly off for this because it didn't lock onto my character properly. But the thing with wild people is this. They stay between 3 to 5 days, and every attempt you tame them shortens the number of days they're going to stay. Which means that we're now against the clock if we want to recruit this person. A second failed attempt means that she almost 100% will be leaving tomorrow. That night, Stargazer is promoted to Oathkeeper. And he's about to take his new duty very, very seriously as we make an oath to recruit this wild woman. And this wild woman happens to be inside the insectoid cave. While Stargazer did slay the insects in their entirety, he fell and will need to be given medical treatment as he's due to bleed out very quickly. He did save the wild woman from the insectoids at the cost of his ear, his thumb, and his nose. He's having a bad day. We ain't got that armor made yet. I order Candledraw to patch him up and prevent him from bleeding out. She's on a race against the clock after all. He's only got 2 hours of blood left in him at this point from all the mega spider claws that have slashed him apart. But Candledraw is a very capable doctor, and he will live. Maybe not the best patch job, but at least the bleeding will be stopped. Even as I get a warning that someone's at death's door. Hurry up. Oh good, he's got 7 hours now. I decided that I personally, since Stargazer was brave enough to brave those insects, will make another personal effort to try to recruit the wild woman. And will also be bringing my bears with me. At least this time. Because let's face it, I don't want to end up like Stargazer, missing an ear, a thumb, and his nose. So I arrive in the cave. It's definitely the last day she's going to be here. Because she's made her way all the way across the map. Which means when that hour clock ticks over, she's leaving. I realize I need to configure a storage area for our equipment, considering that it's on the floor, while I talk to this wild woman and try to convince her to come back to society. After some calming encouragement and a bunch of owl bears hanging around that, you know, let's face it, if an owl bear walked up to you, you probably would be very quiet and kind of panicky. I do convince Octavius to join us. We make her some basic tribal clothes. Turns out she's a jester. Or was. She's actually was a groundskeeper. They reduced her to jester when they found out she was a runecaster, and literally drove her insane with their teasing and making fun of her until she ran off into the wilderness. She's lucky to be alive. But she's also of a different ideology, which explains why she tolerated everything done to her for so long. We will have to convince her our way is the better way. And that last event, risking life and limb to get one more character. It is day 49 on this RimWorld playthrough that I expect to last about 1,000 days. And that's the end of episode 1. Thank all these people for their help, especially Lori and Fopdoodle for helping make this video possible. Lori for her computer expertise and Fopdoodle for continuing to be wonderfully encouraging. Also, thank Adagio for requesting that I start this series again. If you want to be in the colony, I would leave a comment right now. If you want your name on the list, it also costs, if you want your name on this patron list, it costs $1. And frankly, I would be able to have another meal for that little amount every month. Anyway, I'll see you next time. And remember, host your grudge against that like button by aggressively clicking it before you leave. I'm not sponsored by anyone except my audience, and I don't want to change that anytime soon.